Hello, it's Peter Wright and Kathleen Beauvais with another episode of the Yakking Show Harmony Channel. This is the channel that leads you on your path to wholeness and helps you live a healthy, happy, and we hope long life and prepares you for the interesting times we seem to be heading into. We do that by bringing you very good, special, interesting, and knowledgeable guests, and today is certainly no exception. But let's first introduce co-host Kathleen. Hi, Kathleen. Nice to be back on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Peter. Thank you for that. And thank you also very much for tuning in to our show. We so appreciate you. And as Peter mentioned, we do have another special guest with us today. We are very privileged to welcome Douglas Mulhall to the show. Hello, Douglas. How are you today?
Hi, Kathleen and Peter. It's great to be here, and thank you very much for having me on this very, very important topic that's going to be interesting for everybody who listens to the show.
Absolutely. And just to introduce Douglas, Douglas is a journalist. He's an author. He's an award-winning documentary filmmaker. He co-founded Elastrin Therapeutics, dedicated to reversing cardiovascular damage. He specializes in helping people live long, healthy lives. Today, he's here to yak with us about what steps you can take to improve your cardiovascular health, your skin, and to reduce overall stress. So let's just jump right in, Douglas. You've had such a multifaceted career. Can you tell us how you came to focus on longevity and cardiovascular health?
Actually, Kathleen, it's the same thing that inspired me to write the book, and it's the same thing that inspires a lot of people. Combination of selfishness and curiosity. So the selfishness part was really easy, and that is that cardiovascular disease actually doesn't run in my family, it gallops. So basically, all sides of my family had cardiovascular disease, and they died from it. And I realized that I was on that list and I was not. And then the curiosity side kicked in. I was not entirely satisfied with the long list of drugs and surgery that they were taking and the very short list of other things that they were not doing and not being told to do. And it just seemed to me as though there were also some scientific things missing in our approach to cardiovascular disease. And so many years ago, this book was many years in the making. It's my third or fourth book. And over that period of time, I got to know a lot of scientists, cardiologists, and clinical trial experts who have discovered things that a lot of people just don't know in cardiovascular disease. And we'll get into those in a moment.
Absolutely.
Sure. Before we get into the details of cardiovascular disease, something that intrigues me is longevity. I've read that most mammals live between a multiple of 5 to 8 times their age of maturity, and that I've been a large animal owner, horses, cattle, and small animals, and that holds true for most mammals that I'm aware of. But that means that most humans should live to over 100. Do you think that's attainable?
Oh, short answer is yes, Peter. Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. And the reason, there's actually two reasons that happens. This, if you try and transpose their maturity compared to their lifespans compared to humans. And the big thing is, even though the multiples are true, most mammals do not live nearly as long as humans do. You know, cows,
Sure.
horses, tigers, lions, squirrels, they just don't live as long as we do. Now, the result of that is that they don't have as long to develop these chronic conditions that come from things that are inside them, that are building up inside them, but something else kills them first.
Right.
Whereas with humans, what's happening is as we're aging, we surpass the real time lifespans of these animals. And the result of that is that everything that has been building up, calcification, heavy metals that we'll be talking about in a moment, and low-grade infections eventually get you.
Right.
We got rid of those. We got rid of the childhood diseases, most of them, that were killing so many of us at a very young age. And so now that's the case. The second thing is that there are a few mammals that and also fish. So mammals and fish who have a similar brain to body ratio that we do that live much longer than we do. And in particular, there's one species of shark and one species of whale. They both live over 250 years. And the question is, so why is that?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of investigation into that, but one thing is for sure. Their immune systems don't turn on them as they age like ours do. And that's one thing that I focus on in the book is why do our immune systems turn on us as we age? And this is a big, huge factor in cardiovascular disease and all kinds of other illnesses. So just to shorten that a little bit, the problem is that the type of responses that your immune system has are great for you, getting you out of trouble in the short run. And that's how we've evolved. In the long run, they do exactly the opposite. They do the same thing over and over again. And that actually causes a chronic inflammatory response that triggers all of these other chronic conditions. So these other mammals don't seem to have that. And probably it's because they've had a few million years to evolve and humans have only been around for a few 100,000.
Yeah, but I would ask you, I'd like to add to that, that those animals, fish and mammals you're talking about, are also living much closer to their natural state that they have lived in for hundreds of thousands or millions of years compared to humans, who are many humans in Western societies on artificial diets and living under artificial conditions, right?
Yeah, that's true, except when you consider that humans are also part of the ecology, those animals haven't done too well.
Right.
Because we've eliminated a lot of them. So we're a natural hazard for them.
True.
You're right there. You're right. Wow, that's an interesting one. Yeah. Kathleen, back to you.
Most people don't connect people with the environment, but we're part of the environment.
Of course,
as far as animals are concerned, we're a really bad part of the environment.
Absolutely.
100%. Now, can you explain the importance of elastin from an aging perspective and a cardiovascular perspective?
Yeah, Kathleen, you introduced Elastrin Therapeutics, but most people would ask, what the heck is elastin? And so I just want to do a little thing. And Kathleen, you're going to do this. And Peter, you're going to do this. And you're going to have a different result.
Okay.
So it's called the pinch test. So here's what you do. Okay, for those listening, I'll describe it. You take the skin on the back of your hand and you pinch it between your thumb and your forefinger. You hold it up for 2 or 3 seconds and you let it go. Now, as you can see in an older guy like me, and probably in you, Peter, it kind of goes down slowly. In Kathleen, it's going to go down a lot faster. And in someone who's really a lot younger, it snaps right back.
Yeah.
So most people are told that this is the collagen in your body, right? Because collagen gives your skin, for example, flexibility, right? Wrong. Collagen does not give your skin flexibility. This is a myth perpetrated by the cosmetics industry. And I'll explain why they did that in a moment. The stuff that gives your skin flexibility, and by the way, as well, your arteries, your lungs, all of your organs, your sex organs, can't have sex without it, is elastin fiber. And this fiber is one of the most complicated and long-lasting fibers in the human body, and it is woven in between the collagen fibers. The collagen fibers give your body strength and rigidity. It's exactly the opposite. Flexibility. So these two things together are what makes you flexible and strong at the same time. Now, why has the cosmetics industry been misleading us for so many years about this? Because until about 3 years ago, no one could fix elastin fiber. Whereas collagen, there's some studies that show that certain things, can repair it. But it was only in 2007 that 2 substances were actually discovered. One was invented and the other was discovered that can actually restore elastin fiber, which is really important because elastin fiber starts to fall apart in all of us after about the age of 25, which is why we start to sag and wrinkle and feel tired in the morning. And this is completely under the radar for most people. They don't know that the elastic in their body starts to degrade. But here you are. And that's why I wrote the book, was to describe how this actually happens. And the great news is what can be done about it. So in 2007, one of my colleagues, Dr. Naren Vivahari, who is a chief scientist at a university in South Carolina called Clemson University. He actually discovered a naturally derived substance that comes from, of all things, the rind of the pomegranate fruit and tree bark. And it is a polyphenol. It's the same stuff that's found in grapes and red wine, but it's a particular kind of polyphenol that most people can't even pronounce. It's called pentagalloyl glucose.
Wow.
PGG for short. So what it does is it triggers the body to kickstart the elastic assembly process. As you age, your body continues producing the elastin, but the fiber doesn't assemble. And what this stuff does is actually kickstart that and reassembly process. And they proved it in animals. And a sister company of ours actually has proven that you can prevent deadly aneurysms from bursting in humans by applying this locally to aneurysms. Now, there are 10 million people in North America who have aneurysms and live in fear of them bursting because there's no therapy for it, and the surgery is extremely risky.
Yes.
So this is big news, and this just happened actually last year. So the first in human clinical study was done, and it's now in clinical trial, that proved that you can slow the growth of aneurysms and prevent them from bursting by applying PGG. So this is fantastic news. Our company is also working with Dr. Vivahari to actually do the same thing for the entire vascular system and lungs, which you cannot do locally. You have to inject it systemically. And we have Dr. Charles Rice, also out of Clemson University, has invented an antibody that is targeted to damaged elastin, which allows you to have high concentrations of the PGG right at the source of the damaged elastin throughout the whole arterial system.
Wow.
It's an incredible series of discoveries, I tell you. The other one, and I have to say, this also comes from Dr. Vivahari's lab, is like a triple whammy, is he has actually got a cosmetic that is able to do the same thing in skin. So here you have these three different products, but in Australia, Peter, are you from New Zealand or Australia?
Wrong hemisphere, right side. I'm from Southern Africa, various countries.
Okay, my mistake.
That's all right.
Well, they did heart transplants.
That's right. The very first heart transplant. Yep.
Right. Got it. So mea culpa. But anyways, at the University of Sydney, Dr. Tony Weiss, who has more letters after his name than you can possibly imagine, it takes up half a page, including all the awards and everything. He actually invented a cross-linked elastin scaffolding that has been used to repair wounds. Wow. And this, so if you look at this whole big picture, what you're seeing is an explosion, a slow-moving explosion of a whole new family of therapies that can restore the elastic fiber in the body. And it's just fantastic. And I highlight all of these in the book.
So
excellent.
Like I know somebody who has an aneurysm right behind the eye, and being told that there's no way to repair that. It's something that they're going to have to live with. Is this something?
Now, I would say that in a maximum of 5 years, they're going to have a solution for them. Behind the eye is tricky. The aneurysms that were repaired were in the aorta. So they're easier to get at. And of course, behind the eye can also be the brain. So you'd have to see where it was placed. But the good news is that both systemically and with these very finely placed temporary stents, the surgical precision is unbelievable. And so with the microsurgery, they will probably be able to target this. So I think there's definitely a concrete hope for that type of patient. Yes.
Wow.
But having said that, I am not a physician and I'm not a surgeon. So, you have to actually consult with those people. But this stuff is published. So, they can look into it.
So, just so that I'm clear, this Elastin, it's injectable. Is it at some point, is it going to become a supplement that you're going to find on shelves?
Actually, you don't inject the elastin, you inject the PGG.
PGG.
Sorry, PGG.
Yeah. And so because it's a naturally derived chemical, it's pretty safe. And it's been proven safe in a lot of in vitro tests as well. So, and this same stuff is the same stuff that's in the vascular therapy that we're using, and also in the skin cosmetic that Dr. Vivahari has developed. So yes, it will be available in the case of the skin. It is available, and I know you're going to ask me the name of his company, and I'll come up with it in a second because I've heard it 1,000 times and I can never remember it.
Our audience will be very interested. Yes, absolutely. So then I'm sorry, Peter, if I can just jump right in.
Carry on.
Oh, I've got it. Neolastin. Neolastin. And that's also the website, neolastin.com.
Neolastin.com for those of you watching this, neolastin.com. And thank you for that, Douglas. Now, for those people that, if I can just jump right in, because you mentioned something about collagen, people who are supplementing with collagen, then what would you say to those people? Is that something that they should be doing or not?
Well, again, I'm not a physician. I'm not a naturopathic doctor.
In
What I
your
would say
opinion.
is that
Your opinion.
The degradation of elastin and collagen go hand in hand.
Okay.
So, you accept that collagen doesn't have the same degradation pattern that elastic fiber does. So it's a bit of a different beast. It definitely is worthwhile keeping in good shape. There's no question about that. So don't get me wrong on that. Just don't get the illusion that it's going to restore your elasticity.
Right.
And so that's the thing you've got to be aware of.
Okay. So given that you can't give medical advice, you're not a doctor, I accept that. I just want an opinion. I, like you, one side of my family, my maternal side, the men tended to die from heart attacks quite early. I had a heart attack at 60. And when I told my mother, she said, well, my dad died from his first heart attack at 60. And I said, or 63. I said, well, you didn't tell me that. She said, I think I did. Anyway, whatever. So I've had bypass surgery as a result of that, but I'm fortunate that I'm still very fit, and I walk brisk walk 40 minutes virtually every morning, and I cut wood. I do all sorts of things into my 70s. I've also, having lived in the Southern Hemisphere in Southern Africa, had well over 100 skin cancers excised, both squamous cell and basal cell, and quite a few other sun-induced keratoses that weren't actually malignant.
Right.
So I'm a mess of scars, and my skin, when you said pinch your skin, I can hardly even find enough skin to pinch. It's so tight. But would this elastin therapy, do you think, would it tend to help me in both of those problems, both arterial and skin?
Dr. Weiss's therapy is designed to do exactly that. It's designed for wound care.
Okay.
So yes to that. By the way, they were bought out in the largest buyout of a startup in Australia's history, $250 million.
Wow.
And they were bought out by AbbVie, which was then bought by another pharma company, who are now putting it into clinical trial. But we're waiting to hear that because they haven't said anything. It's kind of gone silent. But having said that, you should have a look at the Neolastin product and contact the company and ask them as well, because it's on the market right now.
Wow, I will do for sure. No, I'll certainly get on that. Thank you for that.
Peter,
one.
By the way, I just want to say, although I emphasize that I'm not a physician, that's not what the book is about, because the book is about the things that the physicians have been missing because they're not trained to look for it. And that's the key thing. So, for example, and this is one of the major things I focus on in the book, the buildup of toxic heavy metals happens in everyone from the day that you're born. And these metals have been shown over the last 100 years through hundreds and hundreds of studies to provoke cardiovascular disease. And 3 months after my book was published, the American Heart Association came out with a scientific statement that said heavy metals are a major new cause of cardiovascular disease, and we have to keep them out of the human body and get them out of the human body when they get in there. This is a whole new ball game for cardiovascular disease. And the therapies that I talk about in the book, which include the stories of the patients, doctors, and researchers who together are making patients better. That's what this is about. And so I can't overemphasize the critical importance of these heavy metals in our health. And it's not just heart disease.
No,
it's
sure.
cancer. It's behavioral problems. It's
Oh.
neurological problems.
Absolutely.
The list goes on and on through thousands of studies. And yet our healthcare professionals have been taught only to test for one thing, and that is metals toxicity. That's like metals poisoning in your blood. Well,
Right.
you've got to have really high levels, and this is very rare these days. We're not talking about that. We're talking about far lower levels that the American Heart Association has pointed to that build up gradually over time. And even in childhood, these have been responsible for triggering behavioral problems, allergies, et cetera, et cetera. So this is why this is such a big deal. So what it means is that our entire medical laboratory testing system is not set up to test for these low levels. What you will find when they do the test for metals is it's within acceptable levels, not according to the American Heart Association. That is out of date.
Right. Interesting.
Absolutely.
So that would, sorry, let me follow that up if I may, Kathleen.
Sure.
That would explain why, having lived most of my life in Africa before I came to Canada, I would see Black Africans who were not exposed to most of the pollutants we are exposed to in our Western societies, who didn't eat a very good diet by our standards, who spent most of the day physically active, lived in very often smoky traditional huts, but lived to 80, well into the 80s without getting cancer or heart attacks, right?
Yes. And there's an interesting, which actually goes to show that actually your body produces some enzymes that help it get rid of these heavy metals. But there's a big but to that, and that is when you start combining it, with other things, you end up with really big problems. So the integrated approaches. And by the way, these people that you're mentioning, living well into their 80s and 90s, I have to say still are the exception and not the rule.
Oh, yes, sure.
A lot of people in South Africa are dying at a much younger age of chronic illnesses. And so, yes, there is a very small percentage of the population that seems to have an enzyme capacity to metabolize these heavy metals better than other people. But unfortunately, for the vast majority of us, that is not the case. and the other issue in South Africa is you've got a lot of heavy metals naturally in the soil, as we do all over the world. These have been with us for millions of years. It's they're nothing. It's just that industry has concentrated them in our products, and that's why we're seeing higher concentrations in human beings.
And not to mention dental work as well with mercury.
Mercury, that's
can't
correct.
Be metabolized.
That's correct. No, heavy metals, they're very difficult to metabolize. Your body actually doesn't metabolize them. It tosses them out when it can, but it can't keep up. And so in all of us, this stuff bioaccumulates, and that's when the trouble starts.
Absolutely. Well, now you talked about the book. You co-wrote the book, The Calcium Bomb, which is, I'm sure, the book that you're referring to.
No, that's the previous book.
That's the
current
previous
book, Discovering the Nature of Longevity.
I see. All right. Then you did write the book, The Calcium Bomb. So what exactly is the calcium bomb? What do you mean by that?
Well, a lot of people still take calcium supplements. So this was kind of like the antithesis of that, because actually you get hardening of the arteries largely because of calcification. And it has nothing to do with how much calcium is in your blood. It has to do with the way that your body uses calcium. Now, this comes back to what we talked about at the top of the show, your immune system turning against you. So what happens is that the cascade that leads to heart disease works something like this. you have these constant injuries from bad diet, heavy metals, emotional stress. It's a whole long list of things that cause your body to detect what it thinks is a short-term infection or injury. It responds to that with inflammation.
Right.
Okay, great. The only problem is when that stuff doesn't go away, the inflammation becomes chronic. So what happens when the inflammation becomes chronic? Your body genetically makes a decision. And that decision is, well, the inflammation didn't work, so we're going to try and wall this stuff off. So what it does is it releases tiny little globules from some of your cells that contain a chemical combination that triggers calcification, calcium phosphate deposits, and it tries to wall off the damage. Unfortunately, in your whole vascular system, when it tries to wall it off, it's walling off the whole vascular system. And that's why your arteries get hard. It's your immune system turning against you when inflammation fails to fix the problem.
Okay. Interesting.
And that's what the calcium bomb is all about.
Okay, very good.
What triggers it?
Right.
Douglas, the name of your current book. Let's just get that repeated for our audience.
Sure. It's Discovering the Nature of Longevity, Restoring the Heart and Body by Targeting Hidden Stress. And that hidden stress, Peter, is exactly these hidden heavy metals. And I call them hidden because we're not detecting them. You can't see them, smell them, or feel them. And it's the same thing with low-grade infections that we talked about very briefly. So these are the two major hidden stresses that I address in the book. And I also address how we are successfully fighting them off.
Now, Douglas, is that a copy of the book that you have right behind your shoulder?
It is. Good for you, Kathleen.
That's
it right here.
Spotted.
Yes.
So, okay, we'll just bring it up here.
Yes.
Hold it up. There we go.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Okay.
Oh. And for our audio listeners, there'll be a link in the description on whatever platform you are listening to this show on. So you talked about an integrated approach to healthcare. Tell us about exercise. I'm a firm believer in exercise. I'd like to hear your thoughts on exercise.
As you age, exercise becomes almost the single most important thing, even more so than diet, although, nutrition is absolutely important. But all the studies show that all these people around the world who are living long have vigorous exercise well into their 80s and 90s. So yes, it's absolutely critical. There's no question about it. My book says that, and it acknowledges it, but it says that there are these other things that are knocking at our door that we also need to pay attention to. So the short answer to your question is absolutely. Exercise is critical. Stretching, different types of exercise, cross training, they're really, really important. And by the way, it's never too late to start.
Right.
So yes, I agree completely with that.
Good. Thank you. Kathleen, back to you.
Actually, just talking about exercise, what happens if you over-exercise?
That's really an interesting thing because there's a lot on over-exercise, and you can drive your blood pressure up too high for too long. You can create cell damage, and that's why like what I do is I will exercise strenuously for one day, and then I'll either take a day off or just go for a walk. So it's that combination that lets your body kind of restore and recover and regenerate itself. And I think that's a really important thing to do. You shouldn't feel like, in fact, I was doing too much exercise. I was doing 10K a day. And at the end of it, I was, like I was dead, and that wasn't great. So I actually cut back on that. And I actually stopped doing the impact exercises of running, and it turned over to swimming, which is why I live where I live, because the ocean's right there.
Right there, right.
I'm in the ocean, like every second day.
I know Kathleen has told me many times, and several doctors told me that I used to run ultramarathons. They told me the human body is not designed to run 85 kilometers in a day. So that's probably caused some of my own problems.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think the Bushmen might disagree with you on that. I think it's called epigenetics.
Yes.
I think people who have been through it for generations and generations, it's like Linda Ronstadt said, last year. She said, I don't believe in much, but I do believe in the memories of the body, and that is called epigenetics, which
Right.
is the topic for another show.
Another show, absolutely. We're running short on time, but I have a little bit of a provocative question I've got to ask you, and that is, to my mind, neither the private health system in the USA or public health system in Canada and most of Europe seem to provide good, affordable health care. What do you think is the solution, Douglas?
It's in the book, Peter. That's why I
Oh,
wrote this book, because our systems are collapsing under the weight of
yeah,
an aging population, and the therapies that have been developed and are in the pipeline can solve that if we make a decision to do that. And my message to people is, if your standard healthcare provider is telling you that this can't be done, get a second opinion. I'm not saying throw your doctor out the window, but I am saying you need to get a second opinion. And I tell you what I have found time and time again, people need to have the courage to take responsibility for their own health and do their own investigations, because the standardized sick care system is not going to do it for you. So get with the program and take responsibility for your own health.
absolutely. And I'm going to add to that. The very reason we started this channel on this show is because we believe from our research that more and more people are waking up to that very fact you're just talking about. And we're trying to provide them tools and information with guests like yourself to help them go on that journey for themselves. So thank you for
and that industry, Peter, is growing at a rate of 25% a year. It's incredible.
Yeah. Good.
So,
Well,
Douglas, oh, sorry, Peter.
no, I was going to say that's about it from me, but
Well, I have another question.
you carry on.
Sorry, I have to pop in with another question. So you may have already answered this, but I want you to, if you can, just to elaborate. I know we talked about the loss of collagen in the skin versus elastin, but often right now people are running to doctors to get injectables such as fillers and Botox to help them look rejuvenated. What can people do instead of these treatments? I know that you talked about neolastin.com, which I'm sure a lot of our audience will go and take a look at, but is there anything else that they can do to help improve the elastin in their skin? Is something dietary?
Yes. And I just, this is some of the therapies that I describe in the book. The first thing is, as you age, everything gets clogged up, and that accelerates the destruction of the elasticity in your skin. And in fact, the therapy that Elastrin Therapeutics is working on is a twofold therapy. The first one is to free up the elastin from all this gunk that has accumulated around it. And the second one is then to restore the elasticity with the PGG. So it's actually a 1-2 punch. So you can do things to actually get rid of the stuff that's clogging it up. And, like I would recommend, for example, that people look at Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn's series of books on prevent and reverse heart disease with a plant-based diet, because that's going to help to reverse the gunkiness that builds up inside you. And that's a good example. So nutrition, the right kind of nutrition, can really help to do that. Even if you're not restoring the elastic itself, what you are doing is you're freeing up that elastic to restore some of the elasticity, because the calcification, it starts, like this. If you can get rid of that calcification and all of the fat deposits that are around it, your elastic is going to behave much better. So yes, there are those things you can do about it. Exercise, the proper nutrition, all those things are really going to help. There's no doubt about it. And also there are some foods that you can eat that will help you get rid of these heavy metals. And that's probably also the topic for another show.
Okay. Thank you so much, Douglas. Now, how do people contact you, and how do they get your books?
Well, the books are on Amazon.
Okay.
So it's, I would just go straight to Amazon. And there's more also information on the website. And the website is www.natureoflongevity.com. And that's all one word, Nature of Longevity. So you just go there and click on it. And that will also show you all of the doctors and organizations that have endorsed the book. I have to say, the American Institute of Stress is recommending the book, and the foreword to the book is written by Columbia University's chief of cardiology, who happens to be the chief author of the American Heart Association statement on heavy metals, Dr. Gervais Lamas, who also ran all the clinical trials. And I actually feature his work at the beginning of the book.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
And again, for our audio listeners, all that information will be in the description on whatever platform you're listening to this on. So, Douglas, thank you so much. For me, that was an eye-opener. It was really interesting. I really enjoyed that. And I think we need to get you back for more
I think so.
episodes down the track on the foods that people should be eating and a few of the other things you mentioned. So once again, great. Thank you. Thanks to the audience. And for our audience, we've just had another really special guest for you to listen to and watch today. To make sure you don't miss out on our future guests that are coming along, hop onto our website, theyakkingshow.com. You'll find a form there. Sign up for our newsletter. We only send you one email a week, but you'll be in the picture of who's coming on the show. Again, thanks, Douglas, and goodbye. Over to you, Kathleen.
Thank you again, Douglas, for being on our show. As Peter mentioned, we will have to have you back. You're just a wealth of knowledge. And thank you also very much once again for tuning in. If anyone is interested in being a guest on our show, we invite you to visit us at theyakkingshow.com. All you need to do is click on the contacts tab, where you will find a short application form, and we would love to hear from you. So until next time, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.